What is wrong with African leaders? Africa has now become a dumping site. Breaking news. You won't believe the South Sudan president has just accepted 8 criminals from the United States that Donald Trump wanted to deport to Nigeria. And the government of Nigeria said, no, we don't want those criminals who has committed offensive crimes and they are not even eligible to go back to their nation. And the government of South Sudan has gone ahead and said they are ready to accept even 1 million of them if Donald Trump will do the above, if he will follow the above conditions. Number 1, if Donald Trump will lift all travel ban to the African nations that he banned from entering the United States and all visa restrictions. You won't believe this. Number 2 condition, he went ahead and said, if Donald Trump will encourage the United States citizens to go to South Sudan and invest there. You won't believe this government. Number 3, if the United States will unfreeze the South Sudan US account, they are ready to accommodate more than criminals from the United States. Remember, these criminals are from Venezuela, Colombia, Cuba, Mexico, all those nations. Imagine they are not eligible to go back to their country because their government said, no, we don't want those criminals anymore. But now they are being dumped to Africa. Earlier on, they were actually sent to Eswatini. The government of Eswatini welcomed them, and now they're being sent to South Sudan. I don't know if Donald Trump will accept the terms and conditions that the government of South Sudan gave out, or what will happen. I'm just waiting the way you'll be waiting.
You have to also bear in mind that the U.S. is mounting considerable pressure on African countries to accept Venezuelans to be deported from the U.S., some straight out of prison. It will be difficult for a country like Nigeria to accept Venezuelan prisoners into Nigeria. We have enough problems of our own. We cannot accept Venezuelan deportees to Nigeria, for crying out loud. We already have 230 million people. You will be the same people that would castigate us if we acquiesce to accepting Venezuelans from U.S. prison.
This is why the people in South Sudan are very angry with the President of America, Donald Trump. So Donald Trump sent 12 immigrants from the United States of America who had gotten into the United States of America illegally into South Sudan. And out of these 12, you won't believe that only one was a South Sudanese. The rest came from different countries, including Mexico. And this is what the people in South Sudan are asking. Why is Donald Trump deporting people from other countries into South Sudan? They could have been deported back to their homes. And now, South Sudanese president or the South Sudanese official have made a deal with Donald Trump and the United States of America to allow illegal immigrants. These are drug lords. These are people with so many violations. These are criminals to be deported in South Sudan. South Sudan has been facing a lot of problems recently, including terrorism. And now the United States of America is increasing their problems by sending people in South Sudan. And these people are not good people.
What are the myths about Africa? Just name 3 things that we should get in our minds that when Africa is in the conversation or Africa is in the news, that we should be thinking about. 3 myths.
1, Africa is the richest continent on earth by far.
Hello?
Yes. No continent comes even close. 1. 2, we are all Africans because life began in Africa. Life as we know it, I can tell you, my brother, right now, you do your DNA testing, I can tell you, a good 50% of you is African. We are all Africans. And thirdly...
Proud to be.
Thank you. Thank you. And then thirdly, I want everybody to know about the wonderful news coming out of Africa. Remember we were talking about the Berlin Conference, how we were designed to fail through these little countries we were divided up? Well, guess what? Game is over. April of this year, we saw our leaders come together and signing the African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Yes.
Yes, so we have 50 countries that have already signed, and we're going through the process of ratifications. We only need 22 of the 50 to ratify. Already we have 10 ratifications deposited with the African Union.
So free trade agreement in Africa.
In Africa.
For African countries.
We're going to negotiate as one bloc. We have made a commitment as Africans that the only way we can survive, which is what our Pan-African fathers wanted, to speak with one voice, one continent, one voice. And we're finally getting there. We're finally beginning to bury the Berlin Conference.
Okay, African Union. What is it? What is it all about?
African Union. Remember when our Pan-African leaders met in 1964 and created OAU? It was during that wonderful Organization of African Unity. That's when Kwame Nkrumah proclaimed Africa was for the Africans and African Union now. 55 years later, we are yet to attain that perfect African Union. But that's okay. We are getting there. He also proclaimed you were not African because you were born in Africa, but rather you were African because Africa is born in you. Now, this is the most beautiful part. Yes.
Nice.
As I've lived in this country, I've met many people who may never have been born in Africa or never have even set foot in Africa, but they have Africa born in them. So I see a lot of brothers and sisters who may not look like me, but they're definitely Africans. Since 1964, after the creation of the OAU, the whole purpose of the OAU was to rebuild the Africa and destroy the boundaries that were imposed upon us during the Berlin Conference. It's been difficult because remember that seed of divide and conquer, it's deep among us. Trying to get us to work together. We are so divided among tribal lines, religious lines, even now racial lines and national lines. So we are very divided people. But getting us to realize that we are suffering from the legacy of colonialism is work in progress. We must keep preaching. People must have a serious conversation with the image in the mirror because the healing starts here.
How about your job, your mission?
My mission, I sent here by the 55 African heads of states and my chairman, Musa Faki Mahamat, two major mandates: to promote Africa in the Americas and also to strengthen the bridges between Africa and the Americas and to bring the children of the diaspora back.
The South Sudanese government has reportedly told the administration of President Donald Trump that South Sudan is open to accepting more deportees from the United States. According to a July 30th report by America's political news outlet, South Sudan issued conditions to the United States before the African nation can take in more deportees. Juba has asked Washington to lift sanctions on a senior South Sudanese government official, reverse visa revocations for its citizens who were barred in April 2025, and to reactivate South Sudan's bank account in New York to enable the African nation conduct transactions in US dollars. Additionally, South Sudan reportedly asked Trump's administration to support a plan to prosecute South Sudan's first vice president, Riek Machar, who has since fallen out with President Salva Kiir and is under house arrest. Politico reported that the United States rejected all the conditions set by South Sudan. In early July, the US deported 8 serious crimes convicts to Juba. Only one of them was South Sudanese, while the rest were nationals of Myanmar, Cuba, Vietnam, Laos, and Mexico. Since Trump assumed office in January, the US has increasingly asked African countries to accept deported migrants. During his White House meeting with the presidents of Gabon, Liberia, Mauritania, Senegal, and Guinea-Bissau in July, President Trump asked the African leaders to accept Washington's migrant deportation plan. Southern African nation Eswatini recently received 5 prisoners from the US, while Rwanda and Equatorial Guinea are in talks to accept persons deported from America. The US Department of Homeland Security is providing financing for the deportations.
Welcome back to Gistline. So, in a surprising move, South Sudan has agreed to accept a group of deportees that US President Donald Trump sent back to the country. At first glance, it might sound like a simple immigration matter, but when you look deeper, this decision raises serious questions about African sovereignty and self-respect on the global stage. Now, we all know that Ibrahim Traore has been trying to close all the doors of foreign controls and influences. Then all of a sudden, South Sudan is agreeing to accept or is beginning to accept deportees from US. When powerful nations like the US make decisions about Africans without real consultation or fair agreements, it's not just about deportation. This is about control, and this is one of the things that Ibrahim Traore and the likes of Mali presidents has been fighting over. South Sudan accepting these deportees without challenging the process sets a dangerous precedent that African nations can be treated as dumping grounds for people, and other countries don't want this. This is not just South Sudan's problem, it's an African problem. Today is deportees, tomorrow it could be toxic waste, expired goods, or unfair political deals. If Africa keeps agreeing to such agreements without negotiating from a position of strength, it sends a message to the world that our sovereignty can be negotiated anyway. Strong nations protect their people, their resources, and their dignity. If African countries want true independence, they must be able to say no when foreign powers try to impose unfair terms. South Sudan's president accepting these deportees might seem like a small matter, but it could open the door for bigger losses of control in the future. And the real question we must ask is, when will African leaders start defending our sovereignty as fiercely as others defend? When will they join hands? When will other leaders join hands with the likes of the Sahel leaders and fight for this country? Well, let me know what you think in the comment section. But before then, please kindly like, share, and subscribe.
The United States broke apart Sudan. Why? Well, Sudan was an enemy of Israel, so we have to break apart Sudan. So we supported the South Sudanese.
And civil war in both Sudans and a bigger humanitarian catastrophe than Gaza, the usual stuff you'd expect from US political interference. But that's not even the story here. The story is that South Sudan, which you just saw Prof. Jeffrey Sachs describe as a US pet project, created on behalf of the country that shall not be named, has officially accepted a new role as the empire's garbage bin. So you might remember a few weeks ago when I reported that the Trump administration was holding talks with several countries across Africa and the global south to accept its third country deportees. That is, the deportees who come from neither the country they're being deported from, nor the country they're being deported to. These included violent convicted criminals, including murderers, rapists, child molesters, drug traffickers, human traffickers, basically America's human trash. People who are such bad news that even their own countries of origin rejected them. Well, earlier this month, South Sudan accepted 8 of these third country deportees from the US, sparking furious reactions around the African continent. The US Department of Homeland Security then put out a statement openly crowing over this newly demonstrated ability to use someone else's country on the other side of the planet as some kind of holding warehouse for America's most unwanted. Just look at the honor roll. Murderer, armed robber, murderer again, drug trafficker, child sex offender, murderer again, sex offender who took advantage of a person living with special needs. Oh my God. It's the human trash Avengers. And South Sudan gratefully accepted this honor. When pressed, the country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs doubled down with a statement explaining why becoming the new home for a group of violent offenders so horrible that their own countries refused to take them was a good idea. The statement read, "The government of South Sudan recalls with great appreciation the long-standing support extended by the United States during the country's struggle for self-determination, the 2011 referendum, and our post-independence development. In the spirit of mutual respect, support, understanding, and solidarity, South Sudan responded positively to a request from the U.S. authorities as a gesture of goodwill, humanitarian cooperation, and commitment to mutual interests." Now, some additional context here is that in March, the U.S. State Department issued a do not travel level 4 travel advisory for South Sudan. But apparently someone at South Sudan's foreign ministry seems to be under the impression that the country that upgraded them to red status has any interest in humanitarian cooperation and commitment to mutual interests, which is either hilarious or just sad. Either way, the message from the U.S. government is clear. Whoever lends their freedom fight or independence struggle to become a tool in Uncle Sam's global game of empire has signed a contract for a permanent existence as a junior vassal state to the empire. And by junior vassal states, I mean despised and disregarded human landfill sites for dumping the kind of people who sexually assaulted children and people living with mental disabilities. Best of luck to South Sudan.
The main takeaway from this bizarre diplomatic dispute appears to be, if the Trump administration decides that you're from South Sudan, you will be deported there, even if you're not from that country. Officials in Juba say the United States deported a Congolese citizen to South Sudan, and when they sent him back to the U.S., The State Department reacted by canceling all existing visas for all South Sudanese people and blocking the issuance of any new visas. So what happened is South Sudan did issue travel authorization for somebody named Nimeri Garang, but the US sent them a Congolese man named Makula Kintu. They did not accept him. On Monday, they were sticking to that story. Then on Tuesday, they said this.
In the spirit of the existing friendly relations between South Sudan and the United States, the government of the Republic of South Sudan has decided to grant Mr. Makula Kintu permission to enter the country. In light of this decision, the government has instructed the relevant authorities at Juba International Airport to facilitate Mr. Kintu's arrival as early as tomorrow.
South Sudanese officials believe that the U.S. made a mistake and sent them the wrong man because the right Nimeri Garang is still scheduled to be deported to Juba next month. But the U.S. has all the leverage here. Canceling visas hurts. And so South Sudan was forced to accept this man. It's not clear if they will keep him in the country or they will deport him again to the Democratic Republic of Congo. The hope for South Sudanese officials is that the U.S. will also quickly remove that block of all visas and reinstate existing visas. But the bigger picture here, it exposes how weak, how helpless small countries are against the might of the United States. Zain, Biana?
Incredibly bizarre story. I mean, I honestly have no...
A political crisis in South Sudan is pushing this young nation to the edge. So here's what's unfolding. South Sudan won independence in 2011, but a 2013 to 2018 civil war killed hundreds of thousands. The 2018 revitalized agreement united President Salva Kiir and first Vice President Riek Machar in a shaky government, promising reforms and elections. But 7 years in, that deal is hanging by a thread. This March, clashes flared in Upper Nile State as the White Army militia seized the oil town of Nasir. Days later, government forces raided Machar's Juba home, placing him and reportedly his wife, Interior Minister Angelina Teny, under house arrest. Kiir links Machar to a militia attack on a UN helicopter that killed 28. Machar's SPLM in opposition party denies this, saying the peace deal is crumbling. The UN calls it a brink of war moment.
All the dark clouds of a perfect storm have descended upon the people of the world's newest country and one of the poorest. The peace agreement is in shambles. Let's not mince words. What we are seeing is darkly reminiscent of the 2013 and 2016 civil wars, which killed 400,000 people.
AU mediators are in Juba, and Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni met Kiir on the 3rd of April to calm the storm. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, an IGAD envoy, also met with President Kiir in a visit on the 20th of March. But Juba rejected his claims, denying Teny's arrest and that Kiir sent him to Museveni. Then came another layer on the 6th of April, where the U.S. revoked all South Sudanese visas after Juba returned a deportee claiming Congolese nationality. Juba calls it unfair. Washington calls it policy.
South Sudan now faces a broad revocation of visas based on an isolated incident involving misrepresentation by an individual who is not a South Sudanese national. Comprehensive verification processes confirmed that this individual is a national of the Democratic Republic of Congo. In accordance with our immigration protocols, he was not admitted and was subsequently returned to the sending country for further processing.
Well, the unity government has been shaky since 2020, with elections now delayed to December 2026. The peace process hangs by a thread indeed, but can it hold? We'll keep you posted. Thanks for watching.
The United States government just deported 8 men to South Sudan, most of whom have never stepped foot in that country. And on the week of South Sudanese Independence Day, doing my best not to get worked up about this one, but these are men from Cuba, Laos, Mexico, Myanmar, Vietnam, some from South Sudan. As a South Sudanese immigrant myself, I wouldn't know what to do if I was dropped in the middle of South Sudan. Sure, I have family and everything there, but that would be a culture shock, even for me. Some perspective. Last March, the United States revoked visas for South Sudanese migrants here in this country and those trying to come to the United States. Because what happened was the United States actually deported someone to South Sudan who wasn't from South Sudan. They were from Congo. When South Sudanese officials said, hey, that's not one of our guys, like, we can't just accept this person, the United States said, well, wait a minute, you're not accepting people? Okay, well, in that case, we're going to revoke visas from all South Sudanese people who are in the United States right now. That put a lot of people in a very tough position, some of whom just got drafted in the NBA. And so all of that took place. And since then, South Sudan has been trying to do whatever they can to play nice with the United States. They took in that one person that was from the Congo, and now they're taking in 8 people who have been convicted of crimes here in the United States. Again, more perspective. South Sudan has been recovering from war for years. The United States has even said they don't think that it's safe. And yet they're sending people, even though they've been convicted of crimes, they're sending those folks to a place that they don't think is safe. Someone asked the other day, they said, couldn't South Sudan just turn these flights around and say, hey, we're not going to accept anyone? Well, yeah, they could. And then what? Face the consequences of the United States government when we're trying to get these visas reinstated? That's tough. That's tough to expect out of any country, much less the youngest country in the world.
Africa is now a dumping ground for criminals from United States. Take a look at this. Donald Trump is now sending criminals that have been in prisons in United States from another country, so from Mexico, from Venezuela, that have been in prison in United States. Donald Trump is now sending them to Africa. Take a look at this. South Sudan government have declared willingness to accept more deportees, criminals, dangerous criminals that have committed serious crime in United States. They have declared their willingness to accept them. They have accepted 8 last week. Now, they told Donald Trump they are willing to accept even 1,000 of them to South Sudan. Guys, South Sudan that have been fighting war for so long, they want to take deportees from United States that their countries rejected. Mexico, their government rejected them. They told Donald Trump they cannot accept their own citizens back to Mexico, even Venezuela. All of them rejected to accept them. Now, Donald Trump have been pressuring many African leaders. Right now, many of them are accepting South Sudan. They just declared they are willing to accept more to South Sudan. But they gave Donald Trump condition before they can accept more deportees. They accepted 8 last week. So South Sudan government gave Donald Trump conditions. Donald Trump must do all of this before they can accept even million, even 1,000 of them. Donald Trump pressured Nigerian government to accept 300,000. Right now, South Sudan government said they are ready to accept any amount of prisoners. Now, these are the conditions. They told Donald Trump that Trump must lift travel ban he gave to all the countries in Africa, impose visa restriction on all the countries in Africa, including South Sudan. So South Sudan government is now telling Donald Trump that he must lift that traveling ban he imposed against them. Number 2, that Donald Trump must unfreeze South Sudan U.S. account. U.S. frozen their account. So they are telling U.S. to unfreeze them before they can accept. Number 3, they are encouraging U.S. to invest in South Sudan if they want South Sudan to accept prisoners. These are the conditions. These are the conditions to accept criminals that their government rejected. Previously, Eswatini, yes, accepted many And Rwanda, many of them, about 15 countries here in Africa have agreed to accept, to welcome criminals that their government rejected. Donald Trump that imposed recession on all countries here in Africa. The same Donald Trump pressuring you guys to accept criminals. What happens if Donald Trump leaves the United States, build more prisons? Or if Donald Trump insists that their government must accept them? What happens? Leaders that knows the risk of accepting criminals in your country, their government rejected them. Now African leaders, because of visa, will African leaders or will Africans die if they don't travel to the United States? Guys, who do us this thing?
The U.S. deports 8 Asian criminals to South Sudan. And let me tell you why. The U.S. is basically blackmailing South Sudan's government because South Sudan has no choice but to take in these criminals, even if they don't want to. Recently, the U.S. Had a visa ban on South Sudan, and now South Sudan is trying to please the U.S. by allowing these criminals to come into the country. The U.S. has basically strong-armed South Sudan to, accept these criminals. They had no choice, and that's their whole plan from the beginning was to, accuse South Sudan of playing around with, deportees and whatever and not accepting them so that they have an excuse later on to, strong-arm a smaller country and basically force criminals on.